I think if your top priority is to get better, that should also be true of the people you surround yourself with. You know?
And you think you're getting better?
Of course. I've been brought closer to God, and I can feel him guiding me.
Like, Helen's a really good friend, and we're positive influences on each other. That's her. By the milk.
It's a shame she's so... Well, she's kind of butch, isn't she? I know that's a mean word, but I mean it, like, factually, like, not in a mean way. That girl's name is Jane Fonda. Like, her actual name. Either that or she's lying.
And that is a clip from the Miseducation of Cameron Post. I'm delighted to say we've been joined by its star, Chloe Grace Moretz. Hello, Chloe. How are you?
Hi, doing very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you very much indeed for joining us. So this movie comes from the novel by Emily Danforth. Tell us about Cameron Post and how you got involved with this film.
So basically, it's a story about a young woman named Cameron Post, and she's your average teenager, except for the fact that she's gay. And she gets caught having sex in the back of her boyfriend's car with her best friend, who is a girl, on prom night. And after her aunt consults with the church, she decides to send her away to Christian conversion therapy camp, which is a camp in which they try to use psychomanipulation to condition you to see your, as they call it, same-sex attraction as a disease and get rid of it. And even though the film focuses on the darknesses of that, it more closely focuses on the interpersonal relationships of being a gay person and meeting other gay people like yourself for the very first time and realizing that you're not alone.
Pray away the gay. Is that the line they were using?
That is definitely, yeah. That's one of the mottos of the conversion therapy camps.
Recently you took a year off, like a gap year kind of thing. And
Yeah.
if I'm right, this is the first film that you shot having had your year off. So I'm wondering what it was about the character of Cameron Post that made you think, well, this is, because you've done so many films, but this is the one I want to come back with.
Yeah. I had taken about a year and a half off to reconfigure who I was and who I wanted to be in this next chapter of my career. And I have two gay brothers in my family, so I've always been an advocate and an ally for the LGBT community. But this gave me such an amazing opportunity to meld my love of activism with art and to wrap it up in this incredibly entertaining package. But what I also found exciting about it was our director, Desiree Akhavan, and her perspective. Being that she's a bisexual Iranian-American woman, there's a certain tone that she strikes in this film, which I think was incredibly rare. And it was such a new, invigorating perspective. I felt that this is a movie that I have to be a part of.
It's set in the early 90s, and I think sort of before you were born, pretty much. Did that make it feel a bit like a period movie, really?
Yeah, I think being that it's set in 93, I think the best part of that was the fact that we didn't have to deal with cellular devices. So
yes.
Being that the kids were at this camp, they were completely isolated and they had no connection to the outside world. Integrating in cell phones would have added a whole nother level, which I think it's nice the amount of isolation you feel in the film.
What did you know about conversion therapy before you got involved with this film?
Well, I had known a bit growing up in a small town in Georgia. We grew up in a very Christian Baptist town. So the idea of praying the gay away and the idea that being gay is a choice was something that was very latent through the community that I grew up in. So I was aware of it, but I wasn't aware of the modernity of the issue in America, being that it's currently very much so a massive issue, and it's rapidly getting worse, especially under this current administration that we're under.
I think everybody who watches the film, Chloe, will try and work out what it is that's motivating the people that run this particular. Do they think they're doing good? Is it a kind of a misplaced religiosity? Is it control? Is it fear? What is it that they're trying to achieve?
I think the key word here is miseducation, which is in the title, in the sense that it's miseducation and misinterpretation of the Bible. Religion isn't inherently negative. It's the weaponization of it, which is all based on fear. And the fear in which they don't want these people, as they see the gay people, they don't want them to go to hell. And they see that, they see themselves as lending a hand to those in need. So, yeah, no, it's not, I think what's interesting about the film is at the end of it, you end up almost understanding both sides and feeling bad for both, because they're not malicious people in the sense that they're trying to just abuse these children. They think that they're giving them the chance of a lifetime to cure themselves and set their life in a positive path upward.
Cameron is an extraordinary role in as much as you spend an awful lot of the film, even though the camera is on you and it's very much your picture, obviously you're in the title, but you spend most of your time observing everyone else. You spend a lot of your time listening. Did that affect the way you approach the role?
You know, I've always really loved playing characters that have, I would say, more subtext and more for me to show through my eyes than having to vocalize. You know, you look at movies like Let Me In, or it's always been a strong suit of mine. But in this film, I think it was a very bold choice on Desiree's part to allow the film to linger and allow the audience to move with Cameron to observe this camp almost in third person. I think that, you know, that was a very brave choice on her part, but it's, you know, I think if you look at the novel, that's very latent throughout the novel, that perspective, and she really held true to that within the story, and it was an awesome opportunity for me as an actor.
We talked about this a bit with when Saoirse Ronan was on the show, talking about On Chesil Beach and how much we watch through her face. Is it quite liberating to have fewer words?
I find it so, yeah. Since I was a young girl, I just have always been able to evoke emotion through my eyes and express it. And it's always been, for me, my favored choice. You know, I've always been a much quieter, back-footed actor in that sense. So I definitely think it gives you a sense of confidence, I think, being able to project yourself in that way and just sit and react instead of having to be, I think, the one propelling the scene in a lot of ways.
There aren't a lot of laugh-out-loud moments, but I did find myself, when the Bless Her Size Keep Fit video comes on, that's quite funny. You want to just explain what happens there?
Yeah, so so first of all, this is she's a real woman, bless her size. So she's she's a real woman. We changed her name to Tandy Campbell. She's a woman who does aerobics for God. And I joke and say she's gyrating for Jesus, but but it's a scene in which my character has a big turning point in the film, and she allows the self-doubt to grow and for herself to give into the system and try to pray the gay away. Part of it is exercising and doing your aerobics for God and evoking the Lord through your body. So those were, I mean, there's so many minutes on minutes of footage of me working out to that video in the movie that was on the cutting room floor.
I had no idea that Bless Her Size was an actual person.
Oh, yes, she is.
Wow. Could this movie have been set in the present day? I mean, I mentioned it was early 90s, and opinion in the UK is certainly that the government has announced recently that conversion therapy is going to be banned.
Right.
But could this be set in present day America?
Very much so. I mean, the statistics really stand for themselves. They are that 700,000 people have currently gone through conversion therapy in America. 77,000 teenagers is the estimate that will go through conversion therapy in the next 5 years. In 14 states in America, it is illegal to practice conversion therapy on minors, but in the whole of America, it is legal to practice conversion therapy. And it's growing at a rapid rate under this administration, given that our Vice President, Mike Pence, is an advocate for the conversion therapy cause.
Yes, and you mentioned this administration. I think this movie was shot during the last presidential election. Tell us what happened on November the 9th. I think you went to bed thinking, as a lot of people did, thinking it was going to be one result and then waking up and finding it was something else.
Completely. We had a massive party on set the night before to watch it. And, you know, we were starting our days at 5 a.m., so we would try and get to sleep as early as possible. So we stayed up watching it, and I had actually campaigned for Hillary, and so the fight really felt close to home for me. And as we saw the states start to fall and each state started to turn over to a red state, we went to bed hoping that he wouldn't become our president the next day, and we woke up and, you know, we all stopped to watch Hillary's speech, and we just sat in mourning together. And I think the realization that in that moment, we started the movie in Obama era, and it was an important subject to us. But that day, I think this became one of the most societally impactful, one of the largest forms of rebellion and activism that I could do against the system and against the administration was making this movie. And it lit a certain fire under us that is obviously, it's horrific that we have to deal with the administration that we're under, but I think it really made this incredibly important for us. And it changed our entire perspective.
So does that make this a more controversial movie in the States?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, it's a movie that I think it's smart the way Desiree went about it in showing the light moments in the comedy and showing the silver lining throughout it, because I think hopefully if we get a wider release in September, we can open this up to a breadth of audiences that deserve to see this movie to hopefully change their perspective and let them in on it, on what it's like to be a part of the community and what it's like to be a gay person and why conversion therapy is so hypocritical to Christianity.
You mentioned at the start of our conversation you have two gay brothers. Have they seen it? What have they said to you about this?
Yeah, so I actually work with one of my brothers, Trevor. He's my manager and producing partner. And he was who read the script before I did, and he brought it to me. So again, as I said, it is very, very close to home for me being an advocate and an ally for the LGBT community. But sitting and watching this movie with them for the first time, it was so emotional. And they actually opened up to me in a way that, we've always been so close, especially after they came out. We were even closer. But I was unaware of the struggles that they had internally before coming out to my mother and father. Being that we're from a very Christian family, I didn't know that they actually both tried to go and they consulted with our church and they tried to pray the gay away themselves. And they prayed on that for months before coming out to our family. And that was just something that I was unaware of within my own family. And so it really hit me in a place where I was unaware that it was even that close to home.
And didn't your dad break a Spice Girls CD one time because it had for Two Become One?
Yes, yeah. He was a very conservative, strict man when we were younger. We weren't allowed to listen to any music that was not pretty much gospel.
Wow. Okay, but what was it about the Spice Girls that he had a problem with?
Two Become One. It's a song about fornicating.
Oh, okay. Oh, that. Well, there'll be a lot of songs that
sexual intercourse is something that we do not discuss.
I just wanted you mentioned the director. Is it Desiree Akhavan?
Yes.
So the movie is directed by a woman. It's written by two women. It's shot by a woman.
Yep.
The novel, as I mentioned, is written by a woman. Is that the most female creative team you work with?
Yeah. Literally, behind the camera, 90% of our crew was women. And it was such a change in temperature on set. It was just a difference in perspective. It was a difference in pace. And it was interesting. Being that I've made movies for 15 years now, I've made a little over 60 films. And this was the first film where I felt in control of the moments that we were filming. I felt that it was so collaborative. And, I think that is not only the fact that it was an all-female set, but also the fact that it was a very queer and accepting set of all communities, And
does that mean that, given such a female set that you had, that when it came to the sex scenes, of which there are a few, that felt easier and more comfortable?
Most definitely. It was the first time. I've been doing sex scenes since I was 16. To put it simply, it was the first time where I hadn't had to sit down weeks prior to doing the scene and write out exactly the moments that we had to get, the faces they needed me to make, the hand gestures, the body movements. That's what we had to do for every sex scene prior to. And with this, for the first time, Desi looked at me and then the other girl in the scene, Quinn Shepherd, and she knew that we were competent of achieving what we had to achieve in the scene. We knew the paces we had to get through. And she actually hid herself and hid the entire crew. And so those scenes were shot with just Quinn and I and our DP, Ashley Connor, filming us. Which, that amount of respect and just confidence in her actors and her DP to camera operate appropriately, that's just another level of confidence which I'd never been privy to before.
The movie is The Miseducation of Cameron Post, and there are going to be lots of Chloe Grace Moretz movies coming next year. I think you've got 4 films coming out next year.
I think, I have Suspiria, I have Greta, and I have actually the Addams Family, which will be pretty fun.
Chloe Grace Moretz, it's a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you very much.